So we've discussed on stream before, and I've discussed previously in this stream about how the mainstream media are trying to paint Zoran Mamdani's win as specifically being about his campaign on social media, his charisma, his use of video content to be able to generate a buzz. And whilst it is true, he has been really good at doing good social media content, at understanding the attention economy, being charismatic, and answering questions directly and sincerely. These aren't the reasons why Zoran has been as successful as he has been. Charisma can only get you so far. Good social media content can only get you so far. We've actually seen, in terms of other Democratic Party primaries, where corporate Democrats have tried to copy the Mamdani style when it comes to how they present themselves on social media, have in no way been successful at winning people over because they don't have the actual source that Zoran has that has allowed him to be successful by utilizing these communication techniques. And what I want to do is go through the three biggest reasons that I think that Zoran was as successful as he was, and how this is going to be a blueprint for the left in terms of their levels of campaigning moving forward. The big one to start with is obviously policy, right? But it's not just the kind of policies that you do, democratic, socialist, left-wing, populist policies. I think there's loads of space for these broadly around the world as there's skepticism of the power of big business, of the failure of the state, and of the continual immiseration of working class people around the world. I think there's lots of scope for leftist, populist arguments on terms of the economy, in terms of policy. But it's not just the fact that he did populist left-wing policy that made him so successful. The key reason why the Mamdani campaign was as successful as it was because the policies they chose three big policies, three main policies to put to the electorate. They repeated them over and over again to get them into the minds of the public so that people knew exactly the policies that not only they were voting for, but the campaigners were campaigning for, and they were very easy to understand. So during the campaign period, in the run-up to the 2016 referendum on whether the UK should leave the European Union or not, the Leave campaign had a red bus they took around the country, and it just said, we send £350 million a week to the EU, let's spend that on the NHS instead. Really simple slogan, and it was a really big talking point throughout the referendum campaign because of its simplicity. And that's one of the kind of reasons why the messaging was so strong, and it folded into a bunch of concerns that people had in this country about the failures of austerity and deindustrialization in the kind of heartlands that voted for Brexit at the time. The kind of people who've been won over from Trump to Mamdani in the Democratic primary and in the general election are the kind of people who were also the kind of ones who would culturally have voted for Brexit because they'd been left behind by the centralised service economy politics that had become represented by the Labour Party establishment that was rejected by the electorate in a similar way to Biden was in the general election for the president last year. Really simple message to win people over and fold it into people's other concerns, and that helped the Brexit campaign win that argument. Now, whilst those were lies, the things that were written on the side of the bus were just total lies about how much we spend on the European Union and how much we could therefore spend on the NHS if we didn't do it. That was a bunch of nonsense, right? But it does prove that the way you do your policy messaging has to resonate with the public, and it has to be understandable from those policies being talked about. If you're explaining, you're losing. And so what Zoran Mamdani did was take policies and they passed the red bus test, which is that if you just see the policy, you know what it means, and you can judge whether you like it or not immediately. What did he choose? Very, very simple. Freeze the rent. Make buses fast and free. Deliver universal childcare. Three big policies, very simple to understand. You don't need to explain them when you're talking about them, and it was a really good way of winning people over as it dovetailed really, really neatly into the previous concerns people already had about the cost of living crisis. Transport is expensive, we're going to make it free by taxing people. Childcare is expensive, we're going to provide it universally via the municipal administration. Rents are too high, the mayor's office has the power to freeze them for rent-stabilised tenants, we're going to do it. We're going to freeze the rent, make buses fast and free, We're going to offer universal childcare. All three very easy to understand policies that would directly help the cost of living crisis. And that's what we have to do. So the Green Party has basically already started with this by talking about lowering bills, nationalising the water companies. Obviously, I think we can build on those and try and make specific policies the basis of this. So rather than talk about just lowering bills, like a policy that is easy to understand and implement, that people will hear and understand that it means lower bills, rather than just nebulously talking about doing the good things. But fundamentally, this is where the left should be aiming their campaign strategy in terms of trying to craft policies that speak to the electorate and help deal with those concerns. Because people don't really have ideologies in terms of how they view politics. People like to think of themselves as non-ideological, and I think whilst lots of people who say that really are very ideological, in terms of the broader public, what they have is a set of concerns, and you want to offer policies that fix those concerns. It doesn't matter whether it's capitalist, socialist, left, right. People just want to know that politicians are on their side and speaking languages and speaking policy that they understand and that they think will solve those issues. That's what the left needs to focus on. The second thing that was the basis of Mamdani's victory was not abandoning minorities. He never abandoned any minority. He proudly marched with a trans pride flag showing that he supported the community. But he never made that a focus of his election campaign. The same is true of his solidarity with the Palestinians and his opposition to Israel's genocide in Gaza. Whilst he was continually held accountable for it, he was continually asked by other candidates who are far more obsessed with Israel than he is about his positions. He never downplayed his position. He never shied away from his desire to support an ethical foreign policy, to support the idea of arresting war criminals, even if they're from allied nations, if they ever came to New York City, in accordance with the jurisdiction of the ICC. He never shied away from his desire to see that the State of Israel should not exist as an ethno-state in the region, because that is the fundamental basis of the oppression of the Palestinians. He never shied away from the idea of wanting to oppose Trump's authoritarianism against migrant communities across America, but also specifically in New York City. He never shied away from any of these social issues. But what he did do was when people started talking about it, he would go, focusing on cost of living, actually. I'm focusing on the economy. Should I go visit Israel? I'm going to stay in New York. I'm going to solve issues for New Yorkers. I'm not here to talk about Israel. I'm here to talk about New York City. I'm here to talk about the cost of living crisis. I'm here to talk about affordability. And that's the key issue in terms of communication that the left need to be able to copy from Mamdani. This is what Bernie Sanders has been doing for ages, going very specifically, well, of course I have every solidarity with migrant communities, with trans people, with Palestinians, whatever it is, even though his support for the Palestinians was not as strong as it could have been when it comes to Bernie Sanders, right? But broadly, he had socially progressive, woke opinions, but he never brought them up unless he was asked about it. And when he was asked about it, he'd go, of course I show solidarity, but let's focus on the economy. Let's talk about class. Let's talk about inequality. Let's talk about millionaires and billionaires and mega corporations rather than niche social issues that only journalists care about. We saw this with Zach Polanski on Piers Morgan's show, Piers Morgan Uncensored, where Piers Morgan was obsessed with talking about trans women and trying to get Zach to have an answer on issues around trans people. And Zach's response was, well, yeah, I support trans people, obviously I do, but this is a nonsense point. Let's talk about cost of living. Let's talk about affordability. Let's talk about the fact that people can't feed their kids, can't pay their rent. Those are the real issues that your viewers care about. You only care about trans people, Piers, because you're maniacally obsessed, just like every myopic member of our journalist class in this country. Not that you'd call Piers Morgan a journalist, he's a YouTuber now, but I digress. That's how we have to take our policy on social issues moving forward. Don't back down, like people like Wes Streeting have, but don't make it central, but make sure that we know what we stand for and what we stand against. That is the key issue that has made Mamdani so well-liked amongst the voter base, because whenever he's asked about these things, whenever he's asked about social or geopolitical issues, he goes, this is my position, but I don't care about that right now. Let's talk about the cost of living crisis and what I can do as mayor to solve that. Very, very, very smart messaging from Mamdani. The third, and what I think is the biggest point that we can learn from the Mamdani victory, is that whilst he had a good social media campaign, he was good when he was on TV. He was good in interviews. He had good adverts that he put out on terrestrial television. This wasn't why he won in the way that he did. He won because he mobilized people on the ground to campaign for him. You can't tweet your way to victory. Victory takes hard work. It takes campaigning, it takes canvassing, it takes door knocking, it takes phone banking. It takes every single person doing their bit on the ground to speak to people and have hard conversations. That is how you win elections. That is how you maintain a base of support, not just once, but again and again and again. You win people over on the doorstep. And whilst this social media campaign was really good at winning people over to become canvassers, it was the hundreds of thousands of canvassers they got onto the streets of New York City. It was the millions of doors that they knocked. It was the millions of people that they phone banked. It was the massive on-the-ground campaign that allowed Mamdani to win this election. It was the on-the-ground campaign of activists and organisers wanting to ensure that they spoke to every single person that they could in New York City and have those conversations to explain what they thought about and what they supported and what they were planning on doing to solve the issues of people in New York City. They didn't expect that they would be able to make their victory happen on Twitter or on TikTok or on Instagram. And while social media is a powerful tool and we need to utilize it in every way that we can, if we want to win, and from my perspective, that's from the Green Party, we will need people knocking on doors. We will need to be going in the pouring rain on some days and speaking to people about what's happening in the local elections next May, in other local elections between now and the next general election, and in the next general election. It will need members, it will need campaigners, it will need canvassers, and we need people to sign up to do that. We cannot win by expecting people to come to us. We have to come to them. We have to understand people's concerns, not just in terms of writing policy that solves those concerns, but speaking to them face to face and explaining to them why our manifesto, why our prospectus for government is good for them. And unless we have that personal connection, those personal conversations face to face, the left will fail. Mamdani has proven it can be successful. Let's replicate that here. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.